Well, hello, boys and girls. Welcome to our commercial law and ethics session today. I'm going to refer to the content for week 4 to bring up the PowerPoints that you can look at there. I can't quite figure out why I can't bring mine up on my machine, but my technology fellow and I will work on that later on. But our session today is dealing with the last part of our Ethics 101 text. And hopefully you have read through this from beginning to end, and hopefully you've enjoyed it as much as I have providing it to you, because I think it's a good illustration about business ethics and gives you lots of good platforms, if you will, to look at business together with reading your Wall Street Journal and getting a chance to see how business, operates, and what I call the good, the bad, and at times, excuse me, can be very, very ugly. Well, so I've got my sort of international hat on today because I think some of the things we're going to discuss relate, internationally, because the question that some people ask is, well, do ethics apply internationally? And, hopefully having read at least two-thirds of Maxwell's book by now, you should realize that, yes, cultures, most cultures do adhere to a general concept of similar ethics. So I think the best examples, I can offer are, the Ten Commandments, for, example. So, thou shalt not kill. I think most cultures would, say, well, look, without justifiable cause, killing innocent people is, enormously morally wrong. Same thing about thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, thou shalt not bear false witness. I mean, go right down the list. Honor thy father and thy mother. Hey, I think most cultures would subscribe to that, as well as the golden rule that people ought to treat others the way they want to be treated. So today we're, talking about a number of things. One, of course, is Henry Ward Beecher's observation. In this world, it is not what we take up, but what we give up that makes us rich. And so you have to consider that, reflect on that. We're going to do some reflecting today in just a moment. But I think that's a very poignant observation that Beecher makes. In this world, it's not what we take up, but what we give up that makes us, rich. How about the platinum rule? Have you ever heard that before? The platinum rule? Treat others better than they treat you? Wow, what a profound thought, and certainly a difficult challenge, perhaps, for, many of us. So one of the questions, I ask my, students here periodically is I ask them, do you know the names of our custodians who take care of our building? I do. Shelley and Spencer are the custodians that take care of our business school. And, ought they to know? Ought students know? Should they know the names of our custodians who take care of the building, for them? I think that's a good question to, ask people from time to time. Do you know and appreciate what others, do for you? And so those that may be the lowest on the economic ladder, nevertheless provide services for you that we ought to appreciate and articulate our appreciation by at least knowing their names. How about this one? Is going an extra mile an opportunity to make a positive impact on the life of others, to add value to people? Is adding value to people important? I think you read earlier that 80% of people who leave their jobs quit because they do not feel valued, or they feel that they are being taken advantage of, and in essence being devalued. And so I think the author, John Maxwell, makes an important point about adding value to people's lives, and certainly articulating their names, saying good morning, good afternoon, how are you doing, thank you for what you do. I remember years ago, after Operation Desert Storm, and in February, March, and April of 1991, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines were coming home from Saudi Arabia and Iraq, and the airports were just mobbed with the public forming lines, shouting to service members who were, getting off their planes. And these are total strangers, would just stop in the airport and form these lines, applauding, clapping service members and shouting, "Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service." And that was really impressive, I thought, at the time, and certainly a significantly different cultural circumstance from the period of time extending to the Vietnam era. And so I thought those people, they're just total strangers, were taking time out of their lives to say, thank you to, again, these total strangers who were coming home. So I think, going that extra mile to make a positive impact does add value. So bringing keys and other types of goodies to work as a thank you to your employees. Are you adding value to your relationships and your work culture? I certainly think so. How about John Bunyan in his observation that you have not lived today successfully unless you've done something for someone who can never repay you? How about that? You've never lived today successfully unless you've done something for someone who can never repay you. I think that's an interesting, profound thought. So I think these are, again, reflections, thoughts that we should consider, because I think they are poignant. Certainly, our legacy needs to be that we want to leave our business world and our world in general better off for our having been here. So this constantly keeps circling back to how do we, treat one another. Now, certainly, people do peeve us at times, maybe even push our button. But again, is that perhaps not a warning signal to us? Don't go there. Don't allow your emotions to take control of good judgment. And I had an occasion this past Sunday where our minister misjudged a situation and after church, and flew off the handle and got emotional. And he misjudged the situation and was wrong in in his behavior. And so I've made a mental note that next Sunday I intend to take him aside and remind him that I think he misjudged the situation, and giving away to temper is just devaluing other people. We can disagree without becoming disagreeable or emotional. And so business ethics, I think, have a lot to say about that. So I think John Bunyan makes an interesting point. Hey, you haven't lived today successfully until you've done something for someone, who can't repay you. So I know here at the business school, come Christmas time, among the faculty, we take up actually a collection on our own in order to buy Christmas cards and gifts for our staff here in the building. It's sort of a culture. I remember when I came in 2003, we had this cultural habit, if you will, of thanking our staff and custodians in that way annually, buying them flowers and Walmart cards and things of that nature. Again, repaying people who, weren't going, to repay us, because that wasn't the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise was to say thank you. And so thank you is something you just don't hear enough of. And so I encourage people to use that term every chance you can. What is the cornerstone of all relationships? John Maxwell asks. And absolutely essential for success in business. Interesting question. What is absolutely essential in successful business? I think it's true. Promise keeping. We ought not, of course, to make promises we don't intend to keep. Certainly that's grossly unethical. We all have situations that sometimes we want to have go away, or problems we just don't want to decide at the moment. And so some sophistication, needs to be exercised in problematic situations. Let me think on this overnight. I need to consider this some more. I need to get more information. I just don't know right now. Rather than, engaging in some form of deception or misleading. And so promise keeping. If you make a promise, yes, I agree, let's do this, or yes, I'll be there, or I'm good for it. Certainly your word in business is your bond. And I think we have a chance to see this on the national scale involving politics, that, the word of some political leaders is highly in question, and is creating actually more problems rather than resolving them. Whereas the word, your promise, yes, I'll agree to A if you agree to B, was the coin of the realm in reaching what I call the C word, compromise, with respect to decision making. And so it is in business. Now, we've said at the beginning of this course, business is dynamic. Life happens. Things change. Crises occur. Disasters erupt. Business is dynamic. And so when circumstances change, where you've made a promise to do A, but now because of an unforeseen circumstance that now you can't do A that you promised to do, again, how you deliver the message, I know I promised to do A. Unfortunately, B has erupted, which has changed the circumstances under which I made the promise to do A. Can we, compromise or do C instead? So again, I think truthfulness and facing difficult problems when you have to change your mind because circumstances have honestly changed. I think most people will understand and appreciate. They won't like having to have circumstances change, but we all know in business we don't control all the variables in business that occur from day to day. But again, I think being candidly honest and frank, saying, look, I know we agreed to do A, but unfortunately, we've had an unforeseen circumstance occur, and now, A is not going to work for us. So we need to, think about B or some other type of alternative. So I think it's true, promise keeping. We all know people who make promises, but we know their word isn't good. And I think those are leaders who have difficulty leading. So how about this statistic? 80% of all business comes from the same people every year. So why is selling about relationships? And so it's interesting that when people buy cars, they frequently go back to the sellers who sold them a car before, because the relationship of trust or promise keeping has been established. And in business, I think when you get 80% of your business coming back, that's a very good business, right? But of course, you have to work at maintaining that relationship. I recall when I took a group of students years ago to Germany, to Wolfsburg. I called it Volkswagen International Summer School, because we had executives from Volkswagen, that's their international corporate home, come in and lecture to the students, brief the students on marketing and finance and whatnot. And I remember this one marketing executive from Volkswagen who came in, and instead of lecturing, he said, "I'm really curious about your ideas from a consumer's point of view. After a point of sale, after a car has been sold, what can Volkswagen do to maintain that relationship with the customer?" You know, customer's bought the car, customer drives away, but Volkswagen wants that customer certainly to keep bringing their car back to Volkswagen for servicing, but also for future purchases of automobiles from Volkswagen. And so this executive was asking our students for ideas. And so we broke the students, and these were students not just from USD, but we also had German students. And so we mixed them together in groups, and groups of 4 and 5, and they broke into work groups to come up with ideas. And then, to my complete surprise, after several hours of discussing what could be done to maintain the relationship, they all wanted to go back and put on their dress suits that they brought with them, and they wanted to give a business briefing. So I thought, well, okay, we'll break for lunch, and they all can get dressed up, and in the meantime, they all put together these PowerPoint shows, and then they came back in the afternoon with this marketing executive. They gave a series of presentations to him using the PowerPoint and explaining how they thought, from the consumer's point of view, they could maintain the relationship with Volkswagen after the point of sale. And so I was just sitting there. I had no idea what these students were going to do. And so I was a little uncomfortable because we had a high-rolling executive from Volkswagen, and I didn't know what was going to happen. Well, maybe some of those are the best learning experiences, are those that you don't necessarily have all plotted out. So the students, started off and explaining, why would a purchaser buy a Volkswagen in the first place, and what would make them come back? And so in terms of sustaining the relationship, these students came up with ideas such as, we'll send them a free, keychain, a Volkswagen keychain each year, send them baubles, reminders of their sale with Volkswagen, and send them Christmas cards, send them birthday cards. They had a laundry list of things that they came up with, which were absolutely dynamite. I was completely blown away with what these German and American students together had come up with in terms of ideas to how they could sustain the relationship. And so I could see, how Volkswagen, if they adopted some of these things, could sustain this 80% repeat business situation. That there was an ethical climate between Volkswagen and their customers that lasted. So, for example, the students said, you ought to make a big deal out of the sale of an automobile. Do you have a program where people come here to Wolfsburg to get their car? And the Volkswagen says, yes. And he said, well, how big a deal is it? Well, I'll have to tell you what happened the next year, because Volkswagen built this enormous circular. Back when you look at pictures of their Volkswagen's company headquarters, you'll see this big round tower where they put the cars that they manufacture that are awaiting pickup by their new owners. But the students said, you ought to make this a really big deal, like almost a circus. And so this went on for the entire afternoon. And the marketing executive was he was taking notes. He had this yellow legal tablet, and he was taking notes of what the students were sharing with him. And then at the end, he asked for, a copy of all their PowerPoints. And he took out his wallet and he gave the students over 1,000 euros. 1,000 euros, that's over $1,000 as a thank you right there on the spot for all these ideas the students had provided him. And again, I was just sitting there going, holy Toledo, I had no idea this was going to go down. Well, Volkswagen instituted some of these ideas. And I remember when we came back the following year bringing another group of students, we went to one of these automobile owner pickup ceremonies, and you should have seen it. It was incredible. They had, the cars would come out with music playing and drapes would open up. And of course, the owners are standing there at the side, standing aside as their car was driven out this big, gorgeous, beautiful, down this hallway. And they had cameras that showed the car coming out of its position in the round tower, going round and round and round on the elevators to the bottom. They would bring the car out and into this huge showroom with this music playing. And wow, it was a big deal. Well, I could see that a new Volkswagen owner would be impressed with all of this, falderall. And hey, it showed that Volkswagen appreciated their customers, and they wanted to maintain an ongoing relationship with them. So they did. They started sending out, because I know we got copies of them at different times, not just Christmas cards and birthday cards, but also keychains and all sorts of other paraphernalia, Volkswagen blankets and all sorts of stuff. So I could see, hey, developing an ethical relationship, can be a long-term good business proposition. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, towards the end of the book, I think the author, tries to promote reflective thinking. And so, he adds those, questions at the end of the book, which I think are really reflective questions. And that's why I made it a bonus point opportunity for you to, and so if you're interested in engaging in that, send me an email answering these 4 questions. First, name 3 teachers who inspired you to achieve in school. I think that's a good reflective exercise. Name 3 teachers who inspired you to achieve in school. Second, name 3 friends who helped you through a difficult time. Another good reflective exercise. Third, name 5 people who taught you something worthwhile, and what was that they taught you that was worthwhile. And then lastly, name 3 people who made you feel appreciated and special. I think those are good exercises that the author has placed at the back of the book, because again, the whole point of the book is, thinking, reflecting on ethical behavior, and all the ethical compasses point in the same direction, but I think mandate some reflection. And so this is primarily what I wanted to share with you by having you, read this, what I call Ethics Business Primer. But I also think these are good questions that we ought to, reflect on. And what have we said? Ethics, how would we define it? As Socrates taught us, doing what we ought to do, correct behavior. And so reflection, I think, in this type of characterization is valuable, worthwhile, and I think inspiring at times. And that's one thing we should spend more time on in business, is inspiring others, certainly inspiring our colleagues, inspiring our students, inspiring those that we work with. And so I'm big into inspiration, as you can tell. Well, this is what I wanted to cover with you today, albeit briefly. And so I commend you to look at the PowerPoints that we have in the content section for this week. Now, we have lots going on coming up, so I want to encourage you to, work ahead, because, for example, on our 5th week, you've got lots of things going on. You have your first ethics assessment test, which is 100 questions, that is due February 11th. But you also, now that's going to cover not only our Chapter 2 from the text, our BD text, but also our Ethics 101 text, and our 2 movies that you have viewed. In addition, you're going to have to work your way through our Chapter 24 secured transactions and take the test that goes along with that. So you can see, looking at the syllabus, there are lots of challenges ahead of you. And so the workload, there's no way to make it exactly even. I tried my best. There should be, Andy, you should find the first ethics paper assignment already posted. If you can't see it for some reason, please send me an email. As in the past, we've had fun and games with our technology and doesn't always seem to cooperate with us. But I rely upon you to send me an email saying, hey, Professor Huck, hey, this locked up or this isn't working, please help me out. And I'll jump on it right away within 24 hours. Okay, with that, I invite your emails. Let me know how things are going. Shoot, move, communicate. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye now.